know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. Coming into this episode hot
Off of the breaking news of Condé Nast restructuring Pitchfork. It's shitty on a lot of staff writers, people getting paid to write about music, which is rare these days. Losing their jobs, and that really sucks. But this happens every year, I think. Right? It's like there's one of these every year. Should be extremely wary of massive corporations being at all involved in independent music. That's what we were yelling about when we were calling people sellouts a long time ago.
You know, it's funny, like this story breaking as the day we're recording this, it's kind of fitting with the album that we're talking about today too. That's very, very, very in line with corporations shouldn't exist.
Yeah, there's a lot of discourse actually that was going on in the week leading up to recording this episode that ties in very well with the record that we're talking about. So
yeah. And that's why you should always support independent journalism. And a great way to support us would be go to patreon.com/punklautopod. For $1, you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. Our most recent piece of audio was a Masterpunk Theater on the film Ghost World, a movie that Dylan and I thought was a punk movie. Turns out it's not really, but also kind of for one scene.
If you think like Squirrel Nut Zippers is punk, yeah, maybe it fits. You're like Andrew Bird is my punk icon. I like old stuff.
What else we got to plug here? Oh, you can also go to Redbubble and purchase branded content featuring the Punk Lotto Pod logo, as well as the What's Up Posers and Wake Up Posers coffee mugs. We have some notebooks there as well, stickers, throw pillows, dog mats, cat mats.
Have we got someone bought some stuff, right?
Yeah.
Have we gotten any feedback? Have they gotten their stuff yet?
I don't think he's gotten it yet. I told him once he gets it to send me a picture of it because I want to see the quality of it because I've yet to see it myself. It might be one of those things where I'm like, ugh, take this down. But also you can make the prices pretty low. You can the prices on there are pretty cheap. You won't get as much back as the seller. But at the same time, we could probably set those pretty low and just get a bunch of stuff out there. I don't know. I'm kind of not against that idea either. Us not making money, but making Redbubble manufacture some things for dirt cheap. It's kind of funny to me.
I mean, they're only going to let you price it so low, right?
I don't know. I think there's like a bottom, but like it can be, I think it might not even, I don't think I'm at the bottom yet on some of these, and they're not even that bad of prices. So there's like a sale going on too. I don't know if that's still going to be happening by the time this episode goes up, but
I don't think Redbubble will ever. Yeah, I don't think the way that works is that they would ever let you set the price low enough to where they lose money on it. They're going to make money on it one way or another.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see how low it would let me set it though. But yeah, there's a link to that in the show notes. I don't know. We'll plug all the other stuff at the end of the show like we always do, but let's get into it. So it was my turn to pick the album. So I went through and looked to see what have we not covered in a while. We say these are randomly selected, but really they're more of just on a cycle. How many times we cycled through these years, but
it appears to be random.
So
non sequitur.
We haven't done the 2000s in a few weeks, so I was like, okay, let's look and see what years we've previously not covered. And the last time we did the year 2001 was October of 2022. So it's been a minute. So we previously covered Frodus's, and we watched Our Weapons in the Sea. Before that, we did the Bouncing Souls, How I Spent My Summer Vacation, as well as the Brownie Circus, Looking for the Summer EP. That was our 150th episode, our lost episode. We also did Yaphet Kotto's syncopated synthetic laments for love with the members of the band Calyx. We did Adam and His Package's Redefining Music, as well as MXPX's The Renaissance EP with good friend Corey. And we covered, way back at episode 39, Aso Karis' self-titled album and Taking Back Sunday's self-titled EP, original format, album and EP. And that Aso Karis record actually was released in 1997, was just re-released in 2001. So,
yep,
a little bit of different stuff that we've covered there. And it was funny because we were going through the year 2001 at the end of last week's recording, and I was going like, what do we want to talk? What do I want to talk about? What have we covered? You know, and I was going through it, and I was like, is 2001 like not really a great year for music, or at least like the kind of stuff that, you know, we talk about on this show?
It's a year with some very, very important records. There's really big stuff. There's really popular stuff. There's like, you know, some of the most mainstream punk records ever made came out in 2001. So it's definitely a year where punk has like some social capital, and it is a year that has put out records that have stood the test of time. But in terms of like the roster, is maybe not that great. There's star players, but the bench is not deep.
I say that's a fair description in 2001.
Because like if Jane Doe by Converge, you know, gets injured,
you're gonna have to rely on.
Are we putting that Pig Destroyer record in? Like, is that the one? I don't think it is.
Yeah. So I had a couple albums that I was strongly considering. It was a year where I was like, I might just go deep on this one, because I kept going and digging and digging and digging, and I was just like, we could do this obscure record, or we could do that obscure record, and Dylan was just like, just pick something we know, because the obscure ones weren't even like top tier obscure, you know, like it was like, maybe it's not very popular, but it's still great, you know. It wasn't even that kind of stuff. It was like, oh, the third best album by a band that no one listens to either. So like, yeah, 2001's a year where you could very easily wind up, if you'd gone the obscure route, we could have wound up with a record that is like, I like this, and that's all we say for like 45 minutes, and the episode's really short because we had nothing to really expand on, because there's no story, there's nothing. It's like, well, it's, yeah, like you said, third best record by a band that's not even very popular. Yeah, I had a couple selections that I was strongly considering. I really thought about. It's funny because third best record by a band that's not actually that popular is a really good way to describe the record that we are talking about. But there's a story. Yeah, there's a story there. That was actually a good deciding factor, which I'll get into later. But I was thinking like, we could do Group Sounds by Rocket from the Crypt. I really want to break the seal on a Rocket from the Crypt record. My thinking was maybe not Group Sounds though. Like, it's a good record, but it's like, it's not the one you think of with that band. Like, it's probably in the bottom half of their discography as far as like their best albums, which they have. That's not to say their discography has a big dropping off point, but it's still like, it's not Scream Dracula Scream or Circa Now, or even like Life in Camp X-Ray, or Hot Charity is the name of that other one. Yeah, I really don't know what the Rocket from the Crypt record to talk about is. I don't know if there is just one. I mean, I'd say Scream Dracula Scream or Circa Now is probably like those are the big records. But yeah, once you get beyond that, I don't know. I did think about talking about Idol Will Kill by the band Oscar, which that is the record to talk about with Oscar. A good band with like 2 records, and that's it. Like the very, very short-lived band. I guess ultimately I was like, we may eventually do this record, and maybe this might be one that might be better with a guest, is kind of my thinking with that one. Because I do like the record, but I didn't spend a ton of time with it the way I know a lot of other people did. Like, because that's an important record for a lot of people. And to me, it was just a good record that I liked. I also thought about Five Iron Frenzy 2 Electric Boogaloo, which was the second to last Five Iron record. There's a story to tell there, at least as far as what that record means to that band at the point in their career, the thought that it gave every fan who found it in stores for the first time. They're like, is Five Iron breaking up? Like that was definitely like,
Yeah. It had the look of a Last record.
yeah, it's like a black and white serious cover. Like the band's like instruments are like being thrown down, and it's very much because I didn't know the album was coming out when I stumbled across it in a Christian bookstore because I was a fan of the band, and I guess it's just like a me using the internet pretty regularly, so like I didn't know there was one on its way. But when I saw it with that stark black and white cover, I was like, this looks like they're about to break up. And I listened to the record, and it's darker, it's more serious. There's a song on there that's specifically talking about a band breaking up, and I was like, is Five Iron breaking up? And then they didn't. They would break up in like 2 years after that, but put out another record before then. And that's an interesting record. Ultimately, I decided against it mainly because it's a ska record, and I can't make myself talk about a ska record outside of Skagist.
I was gonna say you didn't want to get your pick in, because I did a half ska record.
Oh yeah, with the waitresses.
Feels like Skagist in January.
We're trying to skank to warm ourselves up.
Yeah.
And then the final record I was considering was Zayo's self-titled record, mainly because it's such a weird fucking record. Like, it's not my favorite record by the band, but it's strange. And I think there's a lot there to be said about that album. But
Yeah, self-titled, Parade of Chaos. Those are both records that we could talk about on this show. I feel like they're not the one. They're
Right.
so far from being the one, but they're so outside of like what you think of when you think of Zayo that they're so interesting to talk about,
yeah,
because it's like, wow, you guys did all of the worst things you could do and still made good records.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Like it's tough whenever you're trying to decide what record you want to talk about for the show, because very often like your favorite album or the best album is not necessarily the most interesting one to talk about. Just because it's like, yeah, I liked it. It's hard to stretch out for over an hour, you know. So I did a little digging, and I was like, I could do this, I could do that. I ultimately wound up choosing this record. Should we run through the bullet points? What are the big ones? What's the big albums that came out in 2001?
So we can talk about, the broad strokes of everything that falls under the punk umbrella. It's very funny when you look at the Rate Your Music top 10. Honestly, is really weird and covers so many different bases. Is This It by The Strokes? So big garage rock revival year. Toxicity by System of a Down. So big new metal year still.
Yeah.
Your alt metal, new metal world still going pretty strong. Like I said, Jane Doe by Converge, massive, metalcore record. It's very important mathcore record. That's an important Unwound record. Leaves Turn Inside You. It's the weird one that doesn't really sound like most other Unwound records. More garage rock stuff, punk blues stuff. You've got White Blood Cells by the White Stripes. Huge year for the White Stripes. Weezer's Green Album. So nerd rock still going. The Argument, the last Fugazi record. A tasteful farewell for a band that always did their own thing. And I think that it accomplishes being familiar but different. Some records that are probably a little relevant to something that you and I talked about we can get into, but Take Off Your Pants and Jacket by Blink-182, Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World. So this is pop punk boom time period. Well, what else big? There's 2 Page 99 records, Document 7 and 8, I think.
Yeah, they're both out. We got busy Page 99 time period. There's also a Majority Rule record that same year too.
Yeah.
So we're doing the peak. I guess they're kind of that Scrams.
Yeah.
People who use the word Scrams liked those bands too.
Yeah. A lot of metalcore, a lot of screamo. We've got kind of your inching into the scene core era.
We got Death Cab for Cuties, the photo album. We got Thursday's Full Collapse. We got Pinback's Blue Screen Life. So that ties into my Challengeography series on Pinback. We got Avenged Sevenfold, Sounding the Seventh Trumpet, which they would wind up becoming like one of the biggest like metal bands of the late 2000s. It's big stuff. You're right. It's big stuff, but once you like get a couple pages deep, you're like, oh, we're already. Let's just out of curiosity, let's get to page 5 and see where we're scratching. We got the second Burning Airlines record, Identikit.
A really good record.
Yeah. We got Planes Mistaken for Stars, Fuck with Fire. We got Small Brown Bikes, Dead Reckoning. Love that record. We got Drowning Man and Knut. Like, yeah. we're already like getting down there.
Yeah. Got some Ringworm and some Caliban and some
Yeah. You're right. The chart, the depth is lacking, but well, let's get into the actual album I did choose for us to talk about today. So I got the year 2001 and I selected Tonight and Forever by Sensefield.
Back then, we wish that we were older, waiting for the summer. Everything was new and everything was fun. And she would come over and slip into the water. Wonder if she knew that she was the one. And everybody wanted, every night she haunted us in our dreams, and you wake up all alone. Till it feels like you're dying on the road. Tears turn to waterfalls, but I taste tears of nothing at all.
As usual, some stats on the band. Sensefield were from Southern California. They formed in the year 1990 out of the ashes of the band Reason to Believe. They were a post-hardcore / emo band, and this album was released September 2001 on Network Records. This is the band's third full-length. That first record's weird because it's like the self-titled is like a collection of things combined together. So I don't think that one's a true first album, but person on this record is John Stockberger on bass, Rob Pfeiffer on drums, Chris Evanson on guitar, Rodney Sellers on guitar and vocals, and John Bunch on vocals. And the album was produced by the band, as well as Meredith Chin, who is a former A&R rep for Warner. So let's see. Let's start with why I selected it. Or no, let's not do that. Let's start with the Sensefield. Let's start with your background with the band Sensefield. Let's start with you.
Okay.
So where do you remember first hearing them or getting into them at all? How well do you know them?
I'm trying to think of the timeline. When did I really get into Sensefield? Probably late college, out of college.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, I had a hard time figuring that out too. I was like, where did I first start listening to Sensefield?
It's right around 2012. 2012, 2013, 2014 is probably when I started listening to Sensefield a lot and kind of exploring some of their discography. And I want to say my introduction to them was, hey, this is the band that one of the vocalists from Further Seems Forever was in. I really think that was my introduction to them, probably through you. It's like, they're really good. They were doing like that 90s style of emo that really kind of got lost, which we call, I think you and I usually call it Revelation style emo, which is always like, it's kind of more that it's the continuation of Discord emo, of Revolution Summer emo, and emo core. Instead of going in the Midwest direction, it's much chunkier, and really, like, yeah, Sensefield had kind of absorbed them slowly and really wasn't like listening to them intently very often, but like what I listened to, what little I heard made a big impression. It really, my earliest like memories of them are listening to them and being like, wow, these guys were really good and should be talked about more.
Yeah, I had a hard time too. I don't have like a specific moment where I was like, and I will listen to this band now. I guess it was during a period where I was just doing lots of music discovery and kind of discovering it all the same way. So a lot of that stuff kind of blends together where you're just like, Yeah, and I downloaded some stuff because I saw it on a blog. Like, that's not going to leave like a super like deep impression on you where you're going to remember like 10 years later to be like, I remember exactly. I downloaded it from this blog. It was late at night. I listened to it and liked it. Like, it's just like there's not a you don't have a narrative around when you heard it, who gave it to you, all that kind of stuff.
Sensefield to me, they're one of the earliest bands that I remember really getting into through Spotify. They are a band that I'm like, oh, good. Now I don't have to like download a bunch of shit. Like, I don't have to do file management. I have this app and I can listen to anything I want. Like, that was a thrill. And so, yeah, I definitely remember getting into Sensefield at that stage of like using Spotify a lot, and I definitely remember listening to them a fair amount. Probably my strongest memories of listening to Sensefield were like listening to them when I worked for the bank, when I was a temp, and I just listened to like 8 solid hours of music a day in like a windowless room.
Scanning documents all day long.
Yeah.
Okay, then that means I probably predate you by a couple years there, because Sensefield were one of my bands where I downloaded everything I could possibly find. Like, this was one of those bands where like downloaded all the albums. I was doing all the file management stuff. I was downloading all the EPs. I downloaded every single possible thing that was out there by the band, and like listened to them a lot. So they really were like a really big band for me. I listened to extensively for a good period there. Whenever you get an entire band's discography to get into, you obviously like pick certain records to kind of be like your personal favorites. And so I was always way more partial to the Revelation Records albums, Killed for Less and Building. Those are two of like, I think they're two of the greatest emo records of all time, post-hardcore, whatever you want to call their particular brand of emo. That Rev emo sound, whatever. It was really just like hardcore bands trying to do Sunny Day Real Estate is really what that was.
Yeah, singing hardcore bands.
Yeah, hardcore bands who sang. Yeah. But, you know, they had that emo cred by being involved with bands like Jimmy Eat World. You know, they're part of that 3-way split with Jimmy Eat World. And is it Mineral is the other band on that split?
Yeah, that sounds right. So
like they have that emo royalty tag, just I guess by being there when that's what the second wave was basically being reformed, you know? And then it turns into the meme of like true emo started as emo core in 1988, you know, like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely one of my bands that I was just like all in on and listened to everything they did. And so I went with Tonight and Forever, not because it's my favorite record by the band. I would say Building is my favorite, followed by Killed for Less. But I'd say Tonight and Forever is probably my third favorite record by them. But that being said, there is quite a bit of a story around this record, and that was ultimately the main reason for me choosing it, because I told you I was like, hey, there's a lot here about this band and this record.
This is one of those records that's not that one, like musically, and really even for what it did for their career, it's definitely not that one, but it's like one of the most not that one records that's worth talking about just because of the circumstances of it.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the Revelation Records bands were Farside, Texas Is the Reason, Game Face. You could even, I guess, slot Quicksand kind of in that same realm. And they had a pretty good relationship with other bands in the same scene. The Mineral, Jimmy Eat World's 3-way split being probably the most notable thing. And with the popularity of Sunny Day Real Estate and Jimmy Eat World getting record label deals, like all these emo bands are getting kind of scooped up, Sensefield wound up signing with Warner Brothers Records in 1996. Warner then licensed Building. So Building actually, a lot of people think of Building as their major label debut. And in a way it was, in the sense that it got distribution by a major label. And that's the first time a lot of people heard of them. But it was originally a Revelations record. And so they get signed to Warner Brothers. I don't know the timeline on like what those first couple years were like, because it definitely became a troubled release. So they go in the studio, they wind up recording with a guy who was mainly known as an engineer. Like he hadn't really produced much else before, but he had engineered Tragic Kingdom by No Doubt. So this is one of those guys where they were like, all right, you're in our system. Yeah, we'll give you a shot at producing something. And then, like major labels love to do, restructuring happened. So the A&R person who signed Sensefield wound up getting fired from the label. So, whenever that happens, a band kind of loses their advocate and their voice that like kind of speaks for them. This happened to so many bands. Like so many bands like got deals where they were like, you're signed. And then they're like, A&R guy gets fired. And then they're like, don't record anything for the label. And they just get dropped. Yeah. This was the worst case scenario where they had actually recorded something.
Yeah.
And then it became this issue of, I don't know who this band is. What are we going to do with them? Like the label basically not having someone to kind of guide where they're going with it, and them going, I don't know. So the album was originally going to be called a self-titled record, just going to be a Sensefield. That's what it was going to be called, and was rescheduled 8 times to be released. At one point, it was retitled to Under the Radar with a slightly different track order. I think it was going to be a little shorter. And I actually found a website. It's called pauseandplay.com. And they did an interview with Sensefield around this time. And there's a little quote from it that I wanted to read. It says, we've heard so many stories, guitarist Chris Evanson said recently. Their favorite excuse was, well, we've got this other record coming out then, and surely you don't want yours to get lost in the shuffle, do you? My question to them was, when don't you have another record coming out? Most of the time, however, there wasn't even an excuse. I think it just got to be a habit for them. So
they didn't know what to do with it, and they just didn't want to release it. Have it flop.
They did. Yeah, it's just put it out. Like I don't understand the why labels do this. They just like sit on it forever and just like labels shelve stuff all the time, I guess. But just put it out. What's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't sell.
You can write it off if you don't sell it.
Yeah.
If you don't release it, you can say, oh, well, the money we spent on making it, we can write off.
Yeah. So the album does get leaked. Not even leaked. Like promo copies of the CD are sent out. Like when it was called a self-titled. Some promos were sent out. When it was called Under the Radar, promos were sent out. There was a Billboard magazine that we went through when we were doing our singles action. It was like from 1999. And that article says their new record is due out this fall in 1999. Yeah. And it never came out. But they were doing press for it, like they were talking it up. They were mailing out promo copies of the album. You can hear the promo online. It's not streaming anywhere as far as I can tell. But you can, if you look in the seedier sides of the internet, if you like to sail the seas of internet piracy, you can find downloads of the self-titled version and the Under the Radar version, which has slightly different track listings and orders. And so I was a Sensefield fiend, and I downloaded everything they had, which include, I think I had the Under the Radar version at one point on an old computer, and I listened to it, and I was like, this album is great. What didn't they see in this record? Like, what were they worried about this album not selling for? I mean, it may not have sold.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was probably they weren't getting on the promos. They probably weren't getting a strong reaction from anyone. So they're like, well, how are we going to position this? Who are we going to really sell this to? I'm trying to think of what the alternative rock landscape of 99 looks like.
New metal.
Yeah.
Woodstock 99.
It's not a Limp Bizkit.
It's not. Even Blink-182 is, when is Enema of the State? Is that 99? It might be. No, that might be 2000. It might be 99.
It's 99. I think it's 99.
So it's not even like poppy. It's not poppy like that.
No. It's really the time that time period, that stretch of bands getting like Jimmy Eat World, Sam I Am, the emo core bands getting record deals. Like Sunny Day Real Estate was successful because they were real early.
Mm-hmm.
to that sound being anything. And also they were a sub pop band. Like,
Yeah.
they didn't have to be that successful. Like, it was still an indie label. It just was an indie label that had a lot of attention. But like the major labels, that's a weird time period, and I don't fully understand what they were looking for or what they expected these bands to do, because really none of them did anything then in that time period. Because Clarity comes out, but it's kind of a flop.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that, the whole story is like they get dropped from their label. They almost lose that record. They have to fight to get it out. Then they do get it out. It doesn't do super well. Like, obviously it does better than anything that they did before, but like by major label standards, it doesn't do well. They get dropped. So and even like Jawbox, getting a major label, your post-hardcore stuff, like, did you think this really was going to do well on alt rock radio? And it was a weird case of the major labels post Nirvana. I really think they were actually trying to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Which is shocking. And they had like smart A&R people who are like definitely plugged into what's happening, which A&R people are always ahead of the labels that they work for. But they were too far ahead. And it's really not the right timeline. It really doesn't even, because it worked for Green Day. Like, post-grunge pop punk was the next move. But it seems like they tried to make the move from pop punk too fast. And then we have like, the whole rabbit trail that is ska and swing revival having their moments in the late 90s. Ska, a natural progression from pop punk. And then, horns leads you to swing revival. So that makes sense. There's other factors that go into the swing revival thing, but emo, it doesn't work in that time period.
Yeah, because I'm really thinking like 99 was already a push date. Like, they had already pushed it back.
Yeah.
So I've heard that record, and I've heard it's a great record. It's really good, but it's also very much in the same vein as Building. It's that style of record, just with a little bit more of a major label rock, alternative rock push. So like, I think it would have done fine next to stuff like Eve 6 and Everclear on the radio. I think it would have stood out with that kind of stuff and would have fit with that stuff a little better than 99, where we're on to pop punk again and new metal is a thing, and
it's not hard enough for new metal.
No.
And it's not poppy enough for pop punk.
Right. It really would have done better 2 years prior, 97. Yeah. So like, it's really the label's fault. Like, the label held on to it for too long, and they were just like, the moment passed. And they sat in fucking limbo that whole fucking time. Building comes out in 96. This album doesn't come out until 2001.
They were an active band.
They were
in that time period, not releasing anything because they can't.
There's like an EP in 99 that features some of the songs that are on Under the Radar.
Yeah, which they probably had to beg to get that out. Just give us something.
Yeah, to sell on tour or something, And basically just they're just, the label won't budge. They're like, yeah, we're going to put it out. No, we're not. It's just sitting on it forever.
Turn out the light. Just say goodnight to yourself. May I remind you, when you find you are all alone, when you've got to be strong. That's when they call you in the night. He's got you pictured in his mind. He's got your number on a paper at his disposal anytime. Is it really true? Could you see yourself for someone who could love you for you? So many times we just give it away to someone who you met in.
So the band finally gets released from the label, and they have to basically sue to win the rights to re-record the songs. Like, they knew they weren't going to be able to release the album, but they had to like fight to even get their writing right, which makes me think their contract was ass.
Probably.
Where you have to fight to get your
Yeah.
publishing back, because usually the label doesn't own the like writing, And so what happens is the band is like,
They would have probably had a deal in place to where the label would be able to recoup off of the publishing.
yeah,
You forfeit your publishing until the label makes back what they. Yeah, a real shitty deal, I'm sure. Yeah.
So they get off the label and they're like, well, let's go ahead and record this anyway, because they say the main reason why the band made it through that time period and didn't just break up is because they were just all friends. Like they were still friends and they all liked each other still. And they were like, let's do it. Let's just go and do it. So they got Chris Evanson, their guitar player, to basically record it, because he was starting to record stuff on his own. Their previous drummer, Scott McPherson, left the band, so that Rob Pfeiffer is actually the new drummer for this record.
Yeah, Scott left in 99.
Yeah, he went and became like Elliott Smith's drummer.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just a little bit more lucrative going on there.
Yeah. He was probably like, this shit's never fucking coming out. I'm leaving.
Yeah, right. Like you leave in 99, you're like, we're never getting out of this deal.
I love you guys, but I need to eat.
Yeah. So they get their rights to record new songs. So they get Chris Evanson to record them. This producer, I want to say, Meredith Chin, she's the former A&R rep for Warner. Makes me wonder if she was the one who was their original A&R. I didn't see anything that said specifically, but there is a story though that John Bunch told where he said he was walking with his friend who used to work for Warner as an A&R rep, and she was talking about quitting and going to work for Network.
Oh.
And they had already signed to Network. And he didn't tell her. He was like, I waited until it was, closer to actually coming out before saying that, well, we're on Network now, So Network is a Canadian record label, but they have a US arm. Kind of a little bit of everything they put out. They're a big label. They, in 2001, also released records by The Proclaimers, Sarah McLachlan, and Skinny Puppy. So that kind of all over the place.
They were it was like a joint deal with EMI. Basically, I think Network did a lot of Capitol EMI stuff, like CD issues and reissues of stuff. They definitely did some reissues of stuff. I think they reissued a bunch of Skinny Puppy stuff, and then also like put out their new record in 2001. Network isn't kind of a weird label. They wind up being the label that like makes Old Crow Medicine Show somewhat successful, because they were on another label before, but like they're notable ones. Utah's fairly notable record, but like OCMS, Big Iron World, those are like honestly most of their big records were on Network. I think they stayed with Network until that label folded. So yeah, a weird label though. Like they put out like an Anna Thallo record. They've done kind of don't really have a house style. They just kind of put out whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, they wind up re-recording the songs Save Yourself, Emergency Exit, Are You Okay, and Love Song. So these are all the songs from Under the Radar that wound up on here. You can hear some of the other songs on the Japanese compilation To End a Letter, which is streaming on Spotify, so you can hear those songs there. They may be re-recorded versions, though. I'm not 100% sure. I went and actually re-downloaded the Under the Radar. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but just to do like side-by-side comparisons to see how they sound. But my distinct memory of that record and then hearing the finished version of Tonight and Forever is that the band was very much going in a different direction than what they had previously recorded. So we get to Tonight and Forever. And I said it earlier, I think it's their third best record. I think it's a really good record. I don't know if they are seeing what Jimmy Eat World did, because this is released the same year as Bleed American, but they would have been recording it probably before Bleed American came out. So what they would have had to work with was what they had done on Clarity. And I can hear this record and think they were listening to Clarity and going for a little bit more of an atmospheric, kind of textured sort of record instead of a more driving album like their earlier stuff would have been. Because this record does it has a lot of stuff. It has a lot going on, different layering of different types of things going on here. Very interesting sounding album that may actually wind up being more in common with Jimmy Eat World's later material than what was happening with Bleed American. So I don't think they were like way off base with kind of, I don't know if they were trying to predict what was going on musically and how bands were how emo was changing at that point, or if they were just trying to go in just a different direction altogether. But what did you think of this record?
I like it. I think it's a good record. It's not great. It really just doesn't have any real standout moments to me compared to other records by them. And yeah, I was definitely thinking a lot while listening to it, like about the similarities to Jimmy Eat World, though it's not like they're doing a direct copy, but it's very much in the same lane. And like Sensefield, like I think you asked the question, why not Sensefield? It was in response to something that I maybe said. And it's like, well, yes, why not Sensefield? But also I see why not Sensefield. Like if you put this next to Bleed American, like there's no the middle on here. There's no sweetness on here. Like that's why not Sensefield.
Yeah.
But the sound is there. But there's also kind of similarities. I got a lot of similarities to like rival schools who also have United by Fate, came out in 2001.
Yeah, I wanted to actually kind of like look at their contemporaries because their contemporaries were still doing stuff during this period. So yeah, we have Bleed American, and really they are taking a big step with that record. So like it's almost like a I don't know, an unfair, like we're doing this thing now instead. So okay, Sensefield is coming up with, who would they have? They would have been part of that Revelation Records emo sound. So there's your Quicksand connection there. You know, Walter Schreifels is doing Rival Schools now, which that does kind of fit into what's going on musically. Braid is done by this point, but Hey Mercedes released their first record that year. And Hey Mercedes is kind of going in the same way that Jimmy Eat World went with Bleed American.
Yeah. If you look at 2000 bands that are kind of in the same world, I mean, there's some Death Cab stuff in 2000, 2001. There's Domestica by Cursive comes out in 2000. The last Sunny Day Real Estate record comes out in 2000, which is like a little artier and I think I'm not sure who's responsible for that direction that emo went in. Like who's the first band that does that for this era of emo bands?
What goes artier
and softer and
Sunny Day. I feel like it does feel like Sunny Day is the one to do it first.
I mean, Clarity is lots of softer things and a lot of little experimental things. You know, the double drum set overdubs and the 12-minute long songs or whatever, 20-minute long songs and loops and stuff like that.
Mineral was slow from the start.
Yeah,
that's there. I will say though, in 2001, the same year, this is the Sensefield record, Further Seems Forever's The Moon Is Down came out.
Yeah.
And that is a record that is actually pretty close in sound to what is happening on the Sensefield record. Fitting, considering John would later go on and sing in Further Seems Forever.
Yeah. What Sensefield is doing on this record is what Further Seems Forever would do on the next two records.
Yeah.
More so than The Moon Is Down. The Moon Is Down is a little twinklier and it's a little more stripped down. And it's also so Carrabba.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a different vocalist, such a different phrasing and sensibility. But the other Further Seems Forever guy is more like John Bunch.
Yeah, Jason Gleason. Though I do remember when John Bunch took over vocals for Further Seems Forever, a lot of people didn't like it because they were like, what? He's a strong vocalist. Like he's got power behind his voice, which makes sense because he comes from hardcore music. And the first couple Sensefield records are all very like belting style vocals. This record is the one where they're like hushed, like whisper singing, like talk singing, like very low power vocals, which is different for Sensefield because a lot of the things that are rocking about the band are not as strong on this record.
Yeah.
try to run just as fast as you can, but hurry, they're getting close. You run out of breath from you fighting their hands. They're tearing out your clothes. You try to look for a place you can hide. There's no room left in your mind. You see your friend and he's standing in line to help you get out in time. Waiting, watching over you. Just leave all your things. I'll take you away from the things that you knew before. Beautiful boy, carry the weight of the world. Beautiful girl, who turned your night.
What are some standouts for you?
I don't know. There's not really, none of the songs specifically stood out to me. It was a very uniform listening experience for me. Like nothing really made me want to go like, oh, which song is this? Like I liked the more energetic rocking material because it is more of what I want from Synthfield, but I don't dislike the softer material. I don't think it was the wrong direction for them to go, and I'm not surprised that they went in this direction. I think it fits in the time period and the style for them to do that. And I think it's not even the unrealistic. Like musicians as they age generally want to do more subtle and softer material. Like it's not an uncommon direction for people to go, especially if you've just been sitting in limbo forever. Like who knows how much stuff they were just like working on and thinking about. Like that's such an awful place to be forced into, where you're just like, you know that there's no point in even really working on anything new because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's like we recorded all this stuff and we can't release it. I'm not going to go work on new material that I then can't even record and release because I'm still waiting on the last thing to come out. So
and I guarantee you too, them just like sitting there like, well, what if we tried it this way? And they probably like rewrote songs a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
We could try this, we could try that. And then, yeah, maybe they're just looking at the changing sounds of things and realizing that the like alternative rock sound was like going away. Like that sound was over. It was played out. So like we'll probably won't play it the same way. And it is worth mentioning too that some of the members had the other band called Whirlpool, which was like a kind of shoegazy dream pop band. I believe that was that Chris? It might have been, no, it was Rodney Sellers. Rodney Sellers and Scott McPherson had the shoegaze side too. So they were obviously fans of like more layered, more textured, more like varying different sounds instead of just like full driving music that a lot of their earlier stuff was. So yeah, you go in the studio and you're like, well, the label didn't want to put it out this way. Well, let's rework these songs and see what people think of this. You know, I do think there are some standout records, but I've also am really familiar with this record and like have lived with it for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with it. It's not one that I usually go back for the Killed for Less building stuff.
Yeah. So to me, well, number one, the star of this whole fucking record is Save Yourself. Like that is the standout track. It's so obviously the standout track that it became their biggest song to date. It got them on the Roswell television soundtrack. It is like the second song on that behind Dido, which I think Dido might have been the theme song. So it was the first song basically that's not the theme song. This is the song that got them spots on The Tonight Show and The Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn. They performed it on TV a lot. The video got some play. I don't know that it got a ton of play, but it definitely got some music video play. It's their hit song. It's their most well-known song still to this day, especially on Spotify. And so yeah, it's very clearly like, yeah, that is the big standout song. It's funny, that article. So this record came out around 9/11. I don't know if it predated or if it was after. I didn't have the exact date. Let me see if I can get that on Wikipedia.
According to Spotify, it was September 25th, 2001.
So people are really like at a weird point with new music during this period. Oh, that's right. There is no actual Wikipedia page for any of their albums, so don't know. Discogs was where I got the September. So it's a post 9/11 record. So that Pause and Play article said that Save Yourself became a really big uplifting song for the post 9/11 crowd. The kind of, which also explains Youth of Today by POD and what are the other like U2 being like a lot of those U2 songs, because that record came out in like 2000, didn't it? With Beautiful Day on it. But like I feel like they played the singles for that U2 record like for years after.
Yeah, 9/11 definitely extended the life of the All That You Can't Leave Behind album cycle.
And so they're like, yeah, it's a big uplifting song. Really, it's a song about not cheating on your girlfriend while you're on the road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's like, you're on the road for 10 months out of the year, and it's really hard to actually stay faithful to your girlfriend or your partner back home, like when you can't see them for long stretches of time, which is like, it's right there in the chorus. It's like the Save Yourself is like borderline Jesus-y, which John Bunch actually did have some like Christian, I don't know if it was like upbringing or like if he was like a self-professed Christian of some sort.
I never really fully, I assumed that he was a Christian because he was in Further Seems Forever, post Caraba Further Seems Forever.
Yeah.
Which feels like they were like, no, we're a Christian band. Like those two records after Moon Is Down is like, no, we gotta stick to the faith aspect. Because the Strong Arm guys.
It's the Strong Arm guys. Like an explicitly Christian band.
They're like, Chris was a good singer and we let him sing about his palm tree girls and palm tree boys. But we really want to emphasize the love of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But like, it's very obviously like a song about sex. Like that's 100% what that song is about. But it's also like, it's a save yourself for there's actually it's a nice little line too. Like I do like how he worded that song. Because it is the type of song where you're like, this could be real corny.
Yeah.
But no, not the stabbing westward save yourself. Could you save yourself for someone who could love you for you? Kind of ties into our Ghost World theme there. So many times we just give it away to someone who you met at a bar, back of the car, and for a moment you felt important, but not in your heart because my self-esteem it's been low. Go ahead and count. It's been lower than low. So it's a pretty well written, I think, song about something that could come across as save yourself for marriage type song, which is not, I don't think it's what it's going for.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it's a celibacy song.
No, that might be more. Did Caraba do that thing for a minute there too?
Did he? I don't
remember.
I don't know if Chris Caraba, I fucks you from the stage. Could have ever pushed celibacy.
So to me, that's like the major standout takeaway track. It's obviously the one that they played on television multiple times. But other standout tracks to me, I do like the opener, Fun Never Ends. I think it's a really good song. I like Here Right Here as well. No Longer Now, I think, has actually one of the more driving tunes. And Way to the World. Way to the World's a good one because it's got the beautiful boy, beautiful girl lines in the song. And funnily enough, that same Pause and Play article also said that Way to the World is supposed to be in the Spider-Man 1 soundtrack in May. It did not happen. It is not on the Spider-Man 1 soundtrack. They got screwed again.
Could have had 2 Further Seems Forever members on Spider-Man soundtracks.
Yes, plural. I was like, what was on the Spider-Man soundtrack? That's Chad Kroeger and Josie Scott.
Yeah.
Hero will save us. It's a very butt rock record. Like, I get why maybe it doesn't fit to put Sensefield on here, because otherwise you've got like Default, Corey Taylor.
There's an Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah. Theory of a Dead Man.
Did this soundtrack, is this one of those inspired by the movie soundtracks? I don't remember an Alien Ant Farm song being in Spider-Man 1. I mostly remember it being Danny Elfman's score.
Yeah, it's a score heavy movie.
Like
Macy Gray,
Chad Kroger, and
Macy Gray in the Parade.
Yeah,
I do remember that Corey Taylor song was actually like a hit on the radio. It was like a radio hit. They had the Strokes and the Hives next to each other on this. What are you doing, guys? Well, Pete Yorn got on the soundtrack. Jerry Cantrell, Aerosmith. Yeah, poor Sensefield got cut again. Oh, Sum 41 probably stole their spot.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good record, and it's the band kind of experimenting with their sound and playing with different modes and different types of songwriting that they hadn't really done as a band. Performance-wise, John's great. He's so good. He's such a good singer.
Yeah, John Bunch is such a wildly underrated vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
He has a very unique voice. It's very strong. It's very clean, but it can be sensitive and soft. But even when he sings softer stuff, it's not like he's not whispering. He's not whimpering. It's just a good singer singing softly. But he still has he really doesn't. He has a unique sounding voice that just sounds like a normal human voice. Like he doesn't have to do anything really extreme. He doesn't have to have like a gargly, gravelly sound. He doesn't have to have like a really high voice. He doesn't have, he doesn't have to sound strained, but he can be a little pushed so that there is like a little bit of a desperation when he needs it in his voice. There's a way that he pushes that is like you're yelling across, a room. I don't know who to really. He's one of those vocalists that I can't really compare anyone to him.
I got one. He sounds a little like Dexter Holland from The Offspring. if you listen to like the more of the 90s stuff, like that stuff, he has that like I'm sure it's layering is what they're really doing, but it does have this like two-tone quality to their voices that they both have that same like they can hit that same register, but they don't have like the same like
yeah. I know where it is. I know where it is in their vocal range. It's the same spot, and it's what I'm talking. Yeah, when I say pushed, that's where I'm mostly talking about it happening in their voice. It's when they're really belting in the higher range of their voice.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have especially high voices pitch wise, but yeah, it's a pulled chest is the kind of the vocal terminology for it.
John has a wider range. Dexter is just stuck in that mode. That's the difference in their voices. But there are times where he hits that same like note. It's just like, oh, that's funny. That's weird.
The guy from Texas is the Reason.
Garrett Klon, I think is how it's pronounced.
Kind of similar. Yeah, Garrett.
Well, I mean, Jeff Cottle. I mean, kind of. Jeff has a little higher voice in Game Face.
Yeah.
But it's in that same realm,
Yeah, maybe it's just there really is like not a lot of there's not a lot of high singing baritones in rock music in this time period, which gives John like a real edge as a vocalist, and he really does use the full extent of his vocal range because he goes low. It's not like super low. It's not low bass baritone vocals, but it's it's lower chest register, that gravitas and like strength. It's where a lot of that strength and his voice comes from. And he carries that tone into his higher register. You don't really get a lot of those kinds of vocalists, especially not in emo.
Have you ever seen him? Seen live footage of him playing?
No, I don't think so.
He's a very tall guy. He's very tall.
Yeah.
Early, he had like long curly hair, like black long curly hair. At one point, I was like, does he have dreads? And I don't think he does. I think they're just curly. But then he cuts it short later, and he actually looks a lot like Mike Knott.
Yeah, he does.
Like it's funny. I was watching him, especially like in the video for Save Yourself. I was like, yeah, Mike Knott and him have very similar like hair, forehead, eyebrow, combinations there. But yeah, he's a tall singer, which is always it's interesting to see live. It means he has a very different like stage presence too. Like his performance on like the Late Late Show, he's kind of doing like a back and forth kind of rocking walk that he does the whole time. So getting on the Roswell TV show soundtrack, and getting on the late night talk shows, it actually kind of led to their next record being a success. Living Outside came out in 2003, and it's their only charting record. Like it actually hit like the Billboard Heat Seekers chart. I did find this review though it was from an Amazon review in 2002, and it said it's almost like a mixture of Coldplay and the Goo Goo Dolls. Every song has something refreshing, and the integration of harmony is great. After all these years, Sensefield deserves some recognition. Coldplay and the Goo Goo Dolls. The band did wind up breaking up in the year 2004. John Bunch went on to become the third vocalist for Further Seems Forever, and later in the very underrated War Generation. Love that band. Their one record. As well as the band Lucky Scars, which is kind of like a rock and roll band, little tongue in cheek. Scott McPherson became a session musician for Elliott Smith. Rodney Steller started a shoegaze band called The Year Zero, and Rob Pfeiffer would later record the theme song to Last Week Tonight with John Oliver.
Oh, weird.
They would reunite for 2 Revelation Records 25th anniversary shows, so those are fun. There's some really good. Someone recorded the entire reunion set, and it's all Revelation songs, so it's all like the first 3 albums. The best material. John Bunch passed away from suicide in 2016, and then the band did a tribute show to John, reunited, and they brought in a bunch of different people to do guest vocals. I believe Jeff Cottle's there. Garrett from Texas is the Reason does vocals. Like they did a bunch of different people came and did vocals on those songs. And obviously that's the end of Sensefield. Like there's nothing else after. Because I don't think they would ever do the band without him. Like the tribute show was one thing, but I don't think they would do. If they were to do another show, it would be purely for that. Because that tribute show was also like a fundraiser for his kid. So that if they ever did something like that again, it would purely be for that reason. But you can't do Sensefield without John. I mean, even though the rest of the band it's a pretty like steady lineup throughout the majority of their career. You know, Scott's the only one who really leaves. And that's just to, go be a session musician. So like make a living playing music. And that 2003 record, it is more so even a step further in the same direction that this record went. It's my least favorite Sensefield album. It's definitely more soft, more gentle. Not my favorite record they did, but the Further Seems Forever record is awesome. The War Generation record is awesome. Lucky Scars is fun, but it's not really my kind of thing, but yeah, a lot of them haven't done a ton of other stuff since then. So, but they were also a little older too. By the time they were trying to, gain some success, they were in their 30s, because they'd already done Reason to Believe like in the late 80s. So they were around for a little while. But I think it's a good record. I don't think it's their best. No, I think it's a great record. But it's not my favorite by them. I don't think it's their best material. But it's noteworthy for being the album that gives you their most famous song. So it definitely deserves a place and recognition in the greater musical landscape and history. And we said, like, what about Jimmy Eat World? Why Jimmy Eat World over Sensefield? And it makes sense. Like Clarity and Bleed American were such powerhouse records. Like it makes sense why they have the staying power.
Yeah, which, this is the right time period for it, too.
Yeah.
For Jimmy Eat World to blow up. It's the right time period for this sound to be getting mainstream attention. It doesn't ultimately really go that far, though, as we've seen from Twitter conversations, Jimmy Eat World, they stuck around. They maintained popularity in spite of having not really much else after Bleed American that did super well.
Yeah, I think like stuff like Futures and Chases Light like charted.
Yeah,
they sold okay, but like not to the level of Bleed American. They maybe outsold Clarity's initial run. Clarity was one of those records though that found its audience later.
Yeah, but it's a few short years after this that emo gets its real cultural moment, if you want to call it emo. Real emo.
Real emo. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't. I love Sensefield. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. So this was I wanted a chance to talk about them, and beyond just like being like, and I like this song, and I like that song, and what else? You know. So something to talk about here. A little bit of a story here. I just think about like how Warner wasted how many years? 4 years of their career.
Yeah.
Depending on how long it took them to record it, when it actually recorded. But yeah, major labels don't know what they're doing. I don't know. It's all guessing.
Yeah.
That's why they only sign individual people now. They don't sign bands anymore.
Yeah. If it's a band, it's like 2 guys.
Yeah.
And they're usually like guys that have just been working in the music industry for a long time anyway. Just like producers.
Well, any final thoughts?
No. I think it's a good
give it-
record. I do think it's a really good record. I'd say like a 3.75. It's still not going to be what I reach for Sensefield.
No. I give it a 4. A 4 flat, 4.0. I think it's a great record, but yeah. Not the first one I go to. It's the third one I go to. All right, well, I think that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening. You can follow us on all forms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, X, Threads, Clouds. I was going to say Blue Sky. I was going to say Clouds. Blue Sky, punkloudapod@gmail.com. Oh, podcast is on YouTube now for all you sick freaks who like listening to podcasts on YouTube. What? Why?
And we've gotten how much engagement off of old episodes?
Yeah, it's like all comments on like 80s records.
Yeah.
That's mainly what all our engagement is. Though it turns out that the best worst over under with Susie and the Banshees is our most popular on YouTube, which that's in our top 5, I believe, of main episodes. We should do another best worst over under.
I guess.
We got to pick a band far enough in advance to be able to listen to the entire discography.
Someone with a short discography. Preferably one we already know. Best worst over under D4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out. But yeah, so if I don't know why you'd want to listen to it on YouTube. It's the same thing as every other podcasting app, so it's a weird market that people are into. And I think that's why Google shut down Google Podcasts, is because they're pivoting towards making YouTube the podcast destination.
Yeah.
Don't get it. I mean, I know there's a version of it's like YouTube Music, I think, where you don't actually watch the videos. It's just like a streamer.
Yeah.
I assume that's what they're trying to pivot towards, but it's weird. Yeah, and I think I uploaded us to a couple other things that we weren't on. Like I put us on Pandora because I don't think we were on that one yet. And then something else I put, whatever. If you think of it, we're probably on it. But yeah, the Redbubble store, the merch store, patreon.com/punklaudapod, majorrewards.bandcamp.com. You got some shows coming up?
We do. If you are in the Los Angeles area, you can see us in Burbank on the 31st. This episode should go up before then. That'll be our first show back after a while. And then we have something lined up in Long Beach on February 22nd, which I think is just going to be us. So we might play 2 sets that night. We'll see.
Right.
Same
Same set twice?
Yeah. It's more of like a bar and grill type deal.
Yeah. People
I'm
coming and
curious to
going.
see how that goes. He said you can play 2 sets if you can. Which is like, is that a challenge? So I don't know if they would be like, it's gotta be different songs, or
Yeah, probably not.
I'm assuming they mean you can just repeat your set. Anyway, big things coming.
Uh-oh. Don't say that.
Yeah.
My favorite posts, or my favorite accounts on Instagram are like the band accounts where like their bio says big things coming and then they break up or never release another thing.
Yeah. We're getting settled in with a new bass player. So that's the focus for right now. But
yeah,
I'm not spending forever doing that. And this guy is doing the work on his own time so far, which is great. So if that continues to be the case, we can be moving on to new material pretty soon, which I'm very much looking forward to doing.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.